So just to cover some housekeeping, this webinar will be recorded and a copy of the presentation will be available on the Georgia Recovers website. All attendees will be muted. Please use the Q&A panel on the bottom of your screen to ask any questions. The chat feature is also available for general commentary, but it will not be moderated as closely. The interpreter today, Aaron, will remain spotlighted throughout the webinar. To adjust your view and see all of the speakers and the panelists, click view in the top right corner of your screen and then select speaker or gallery. Users can also select side-by-side view. So for our agenda today, we'll cover welcome and housekeeping, an overview of the Georgia Recovers campaign. We'll then have our presenters go through their presentations, a Q&A section, and then we will wrap up the webinar. So just a quick overview of the Georgia Recovers campaign. So Georgia Recovers is an evidence-based public health campaign aimed to reduce the prejudice and discrimination that's associated with substance use disorder in Georgia. The campaign is brought to you by DBHDD and builds off of the pivotal work of the Georgia Council for Recovery. So our goals and objectives include increasing knowledge about SUD and that recovery is not only possible, but probable. We want to improve attitudes towards those living with and or in recovery from SUD, and strengthen the capacity of stakeholders, including organizations and individuals that are already responding to this crisis. So we have 3 pillars of work, starting off with community connection. So Georgia Recovers connects with community organizations across the state. We also have our advisory board, the CIC, which guides the direction of the campaign. Story sharing is also pivotal to the campaign. So we collect stories of recovery and also allyship. And these stories are shared across all of our social media channels. Our education sector, we really seek to change attitudes by promoting messaging that speaks to hope and also recovery. And then we also host monthly webinars as such, really wanting to shed the light on topics related to substance use disorder. So 2 special announcements. We currently are accepting stories. So our campaign is rooted in the power of storytelling. And by leveraging these lived experiences of people in recovery, their family, friends, and allies, we really seek to change the narrative around addiction. And so Ashley will go ahead and drop the link in the chat if you're interested in sharing your story. And then also nominations for our advisory committee, the Community Impact Committee, are also open. And so the CIC is comprised of community leaders that provide ongoing feedback and guidance on all of the elements of the campaign. And so the nomination window will close on August 28th. So feel free to nominate yourself and others. Also connect with us on our social media platforms and feel free to sign up as a campaign partner as well. So introducing our first speaker, Ashley Seabold. So prior to joining Shatterproof, Ashley worked at Public Health, Dayton and Montgomery County as a maternal, child health, and chronic infectious disease epidemiologist. In these roles, Ashley conducted county and regional population health surveillance and provided data analysis and monitoring and evaluation support for the local Ohio Equity Institute, agency health promotion programs, and community coalition grant-funded initiatives focused on improving equitable access and opportunity for all Montgomery County residents. Before her time at PHDMC, Ashley was a high school health educator. Ashley grew up in Ohio and currently resides in Colorado with her spouse, daughter, and 2 dogs. She has a master's in public health from Wright State University and a Bachelor of Science in exercise science from Miami University. Ashley and her family are very active and love to be outside. Outside of the office, you can find her on the ball field and also hiking in the mountains. And I will pass it over to Ashley.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jayla, for the introduction. As Jayla said, I am Ashley Seabold, data specialist for the National Stigma Initiatives. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So give me 1 second here. See if I can pick the right one. Okay, are we good to go, Jayla? Can you see my screen?
Looks all good.
Perfect. All right, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what addiction stigma is, evaluation of the Georgia Recovers campaign, and jumping into a little bit on the NIMBY effect, which will lead into our next speaker. So again, I'm going to just provide a brief overview of addiction stigma, what it is, how we measure addiction stigma through the Shatterproof Addiction Stigma Index, also known as the SASI. We're going to talk a little bit about population baseline analysis, why it's important, and some findings from the Georgia Recovers baseline analysis. And then we're going to jump into Not in My Backyard and talk about what it is, why it exists, and what we can do to overcome it. So first, what is addiction stigma? Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. Addiction stigma is a barrier to receiving health care and engaging in help-seeking behaviors, which can result in discrimination and exclusion. It starts with stereotypes. Stereotypes lead to prejudice. Prejudice leads to discriminatory behaviors, which then can lead to social isolation of the individuals experiencing the discrimination. Addiction stigma and discrimination experienced by those with substance use disorder independently leads to tens of thousands of preventable deaths every single year. Again, the key drivers of the overdose epidemic, 7 of the 9 are driven by pervasive stigma. And you can see those 7 here. So shame and isolation, individuals not seeking help for their addiction, insufficient treatment capacity, healthcare coverage and reimbursement disparities, and non-evidence-based treatment, criminalization of people with substance use disorder, and social and structural barriers to recovery. So how do we measure this addiction stigma? What is the landscape of it, and how can we overcome and work to reduce it? Well, Shatterproof and Dr. Bria Perry and Dr. Ann Crendel from Indiana University developed a first-of-its-kind measurement tool, the Shatterproof Addiction Stigma Index, also known as SASI. This assesses attitudes about substance use and people who use substances from the public and perceptions of those with substance use disorder. A little bit about the methodology here. The SASI utilizes indices, and an index measures change in a representative group of individual data points. The SASI has 3 indices that measure public, structural, and self-stigma. Measuring change in this composite manner sets a baseline and enables us to identify comprehensive progress. So it's a vital component of stigma reduction. We can use it to take a pre-test, do an intervention, use it as a post-test survey, and see if there's any changes and how effective that intervention was. It also utilizes a vignette strategy, which depicts a real individual with substance use disorder, which allows standardizing by providing a neutral tone to avoid provoking any immediate bias. And again, down here, this paragraph here is an example. You're going to read a description about a person. Let's call him John. After you read this, you will answer some questions. No right or wrong answers. We're only interested in what you think of him. So the main stigma scales, the indices, are public stigma. It's a 14-item scale that measures stigmatizing attitudes and beliefs about people with substance use disorders. This does include indicators of traditional prejudice and preference for social exclusion or social distancing. The structural stigma scale is 5 items, and it measures support for discrimination against people with substance use disorders in major social institutions. The self-stigma scale is a 15-item scale, and it measures internalization of stigmatizing attitudes and beliefs about substance use and resulting negative emotions and opinions of oneself. And we do have a 4th index, the medication for opioid use disorder, or MOUD. It is a subset of the public stigma scale. So that is the SASI. The next step is talking about how we're measuring Georgia population level stigma, and specifically looking at evaluating the Georgia Recovers campaign. So a population baseline analysis, why is it important? Well, it's an essential measurement collected prior to an intervention, which guides program and project development and also monitors progress and effectiveness. There are three ways that we can use baseline data, right? We've got benchmarking, which is just a standard or point of reference by which data can be compared, a point in time value from the survey, the results. We can look at change over time. So the difference between when we took that first baseline analysis to the post analysis. So the difference between the end and the beginning of a time period. And again, we can evaluate interventions which assess the impact of an intervention, typically measured pre, mid, and post efforts. So when looking specifically at evaluating Georgia Recovers, Georgia baseline data is used for benchmarking. We compare the Georgia stigma levels to national averages and identify the differences. We then can identify differences in Georgia stigma levels over time. So what did it look like when we fielded it the first round in January of 2023 compared to 12 months later? Do we see any population level differences in Georgia stigma? And then we can also use it to evaluate the effectiveness of the Georgia Recovers campaign. So looking at that post survey, what differences do we see among those who are campaign exposed versus unexposed, and see if we have varying stigma levels or if we have better outcomes among those who have seen or were exposed to the Georgia Recovers campaign. So the first step is the pretest, right? The baseline analysis. Utilizing the SASE as a pretest tool, we can identify initial levels of stigmatizing attitudes and discriminatory behaviors among Georgians. And this is among adults 18 and older toward individuals with a substance use disorder. This is population level. We do a weighting so we can actually utilize these results and compare it and contrast it to the actual entire state of Georgia. So this data allows us to identify specific priority populations for our campaign intervention. It helps us to develop specific anti-stigma messages relating to the most stigmatizing concepts we identify from the results. And then also, we can analyze associations from the Georgia Recovers campaign and shifts in stigmatizing attitudes from pre to post test. So baseline data is extremely important in terms of evaluation. When we did the baseline analysis, here are the indice results. So you can see here, so the lowest level of stigma is a 1, the highest level of stigma is a 4, and we take the mean responses of those indices, and that tells us the stigma level for each of the indices. So you can see here that public stigma is the most entrenched. That includes traditional prejudice and social distancing beliefs. Structural stigma, which is actually has the lowest level of stigma, is support for policies and practices related to opioid use disorder recovery or substance use disorder recovery, which is great to see. And then you can see here the next highest is MOUD. So stigma toward medications for opioid use disorder. Some of the general findings, again, public stigma is most entrenched. We did see a split support for MOUD, which is the NIMBY effect observed, which I will get into in a little bit. We saw strong support for opioid use disorder and recovery-friendly policies. And the following groups of individuals generally held more stigmatizing views, which again can help us pinpoint our target population for campaigning. So older respondents, 45 years and up, typically had higher levels of public stigma. Higher income households also had higher levels of public stigma, and those less educated, so no college degree, tended to have higher levels of MOUD stigma. So with that, I am going to focus a little bit more on the second bullet here, so split support for MOUD and the NIMBY effect observed. So not in my backyard, or NIMBY. So what is it? In general, not in my backyard, or NIMBY, is related to community residents' resistance to adopting various initiatives in their neighborhood. This could be due to concerns about what the initiative will bring, whether that's realistic or not. When we look at substance use specifically, NIMBYism is often observed with harm reduction, treatment, and recovery services. Many individuals see the need for these services, but do not want them in their neighborhood. They want them to be available in other locations, not within their community. What is the root cause and concerns? Well, NIMBYism tends to stem from persistent negative stigma, which is attached to substance use and substance use disorders. This stigma then perpetuates fear. And when research has shown that people often cite concerns that harm reduction and treatment services will attract undesirable or dangerous people and behaviors into their community, it could increase crime or it could decrease property value. When we look at the Georgia baseline data and that NIMBY effect that was observed with MOUD, you can see here the split support. So more than 2/3 of Georgians felt that MOUD should be easily accessible, and 6 in 10 felt MOUD is an effective treatment. However, less than half would be willing to have an MOUD clinic in their own neighborhood. And this is not necessarily Georgia specific. We've seen this in the national data. We've seen this in other areas. It's definitely prevalent with SUD treatment and recovery services. So what is the implication and solution here? NIMBY is a pervasive attitude that has created resistance to SUD support services and treatment centers being built, and also increases barriers in access to care to those who need it. So how do we overcome it? Just a few solutions here. Destigmatizing harm reduction, treatment, and recovery services, dispelling stereotypes and fears by educating the community, and advocating for policy and practice change. And that's all I have, and I am going to hand it back over to Jayla to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'll go ahead and reshare my screen. Give me 1 second, you all. Okay, so next up we have Garrett Vandiver, who is the co-founder and executive director of Nick's New Beginnings. So Garrett Vandiver lost his son Nick to the disease of addiction in 2014. Garrett and his family decided then to dedicate their hearts and time to bring this tragic story to light and to prevent others from experiencing a similar unnecessary loss. In 2018, Garrett and his wife, Christina, opened a recovery residence in Las Vegas, Nevada that continues to operate today. After seeing the success of its residents and discovering the need for these services in Butts County, the Vandivers began to explore how they could bring that success and healing to their community in Georgia. This is the foundation of how Nick's New Beginnings, a structured living experience, was born. Set apart from the traditional recovery residence models, Nick's New Beginnings homes focuses on faith, family, and community. Ultimately, Nick's New Beginnings family members will be prepared to continue a long-term journey to a productive, substance-free life with a strong, supportive community. And I will pass it over to Garrett.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to be a part of this. We're honored. I'm with my wife, Christina, and I also have my son, Lucas, which was Nick's brother, sitting in the background here. Nick, all-American kid, played sports, played baseball, which was one of his biggest loves. High school, lettered in all 4 sports, was the captain of each team, prom king. Just an amazing kid, like a lot of other kids were losing. Nick died in 2014 and left us. He also had his girl had a baby, which was 7 months old when he passed.
We're going to share our screen now.
We have some slides we're going to go through that'll kind of help us explain the struggles we're going through here in Georgia, in Butts County, Georgia. And just a little bit of a timeline. Christine is going to have a few things information to give us as well. 2014 to 2018, after losing Nick, we began focusing on how we could prevent our families from experiencing this unnecessary loss. In 2018, opened the Las Vegas house, Nick's House, Las Vegas. When we first opened that home, we were approached by neighbors who were apprehensive, but since came to support our house and even invited our residents to family events. We had one guy that was one of our biggest, he was against this. The other day he showed up with a barbecue and asked if we could use it. So we've smoothed out the neighborhood. They love having us there now. Nick's mom and stepdad live in Butts County, and we started visiting with Nick's nearly 10 years ago. Christina and I moved here in January of 2022. We discovered very little services meeting this recovery community needs and no recovery residents. Met with the coroner. We've had 23 deaths in 18 months of an overdose. And there's still more, they just haven't been signed off. So that's not an accurate number. It's more than that. That's more than one death per month in a very small county. We founded Nick's New Beginnings, a 12-step Christian men's house. In 2022, we also applied for and received a nonprofit status with the IRS. And the main reason we did this too is we just wanted to show the county that this was not a money grab or flop house that we were trying to put in just to make money, and that we were just trying to help our community. We opened that first residence. We have policies requiring curfews, drug tests, and good neighbor policy, and includes rules regarding parking, noise, congregating, smoking, and language. We began working with GAR, which is an amazing organization that we're now a part of, towards our GAR certification, Georgia Association of Recovery Residents, which we received in 2023. We are grateful to be a part of GAR. The certification process was very stringent, which is great. We are hoping this becomes the standard for the recovery residents in Georgia, because we know it will keep flop houses out.
Prior to inquiring our home of our recovery residents, we researched the federal law to determine where recovery residents are allowed. Under the Federal Housing Act and the American Disabled Act, a recovery residence is allowed in a single-family housing. The beginning of our NIMBY battle in Butts County started with the code enforcement officer visiting the house while we were in the beginning stages of remodeling. He recommended that we go to planning and developing. We submitted a letter with their policies and documents explaining the FHA and the ADA allowing recovery residents, and we're told that we were going to the county attorney. We met with the county attorney, who was unaware of the issue, but said a new planning and development director was making himself familiar with the current issues in Butts County. We set a meeting with planning and zoning department, the previous and current planning and development directors, as well as the assistant fire chief. We gave them our policies, we answered their questions, and we discussed wanting to do neighborhood cleanups. We were very transparent and honest about our goals and mission. They said for us to keep moving forward, however, not to advertise and not to do our community cleanup. They would work on how to categorize us. So we continued to move forward. Not hearing anything from zoning and planning, we were surprised when a month later, the NIMBY family lead received a citation for operating without a business license. And the code enforcement officer threatened to shut down the house. Knowing we needed expert advice, we hired an attorney. However, we had to hire an attorney outside of our county because nobody in Butts County would go against them. After some time, we personally and NNB received a lawsuit filed by Butts County Board of County Commissioners that had discriminatory language in it. At this time, and at the recommendation of other recovery residents, we reached out to the Federal Housing and Urban Development to see if they could assist. This matter is currently in the hands of the federal HUD investigator. Within a week of being served with the lawsuit, the citation against the family lead was dismissed after the legal fees were incurred. During the time, the code enforcement officer approached our residents several times in an intimidating manner, asking about their criminal background. The next hurdle we face is a misclassification identifying NIMBY as a personal care home. The problem with this is we are unable to receive a license to become a personal care home because we are not. But the county refuses to move forward until we receive a license. We have filed an appeal with the county because we are not a personal care home, and a zoning appeals hearing was held. Garrett will go in some very discriminatory comments made at the hearing in a bit. The appeals board said they didn't necessarily believe we were a personal care home, but they didn't know what we were, so they voted with the county. We then filed an appeal of the hearing determination to the county superior court that is currently dependent as the lawsuit against us.
So at our appeals court, to provide some context before reading the quotes made at the appeals hearing, someone in the neighborhood who is in long-term recovery is at the front of our NIMBY battle. They told us they didn't want drug addicts and thugs in their neighborhood, and that our house is bringing the neighborhood down when it is one of the nicest houses, when it's one of the nicer houses in the neighborhood. This is a direct quote from one of our neighbors. The comment, "These people," is a phrase we hear so often. So the gentleman, when he got up to talk, so I just want to ask this question: would you want it in y'all neighborhood? That's what I want to know. That's the question I want. If y'all wouldn't want it, y'all want y'all's kids to sleep good, the parents to sleep good. We don't know what these people might do. You look at the news all the time. They have mass killings. We don't want it. They might not do that, but you don't know. So that's the point. You don't want that it in your neighborhood. So I ain't telling you no lie. He telling the truth. That's all I have to say. Here's another quote from the appeals hearing. Prior to and since opening our house, the police patrol the neighborhood several times per day. The police have never been called to our house. Well, let me read this other quote real quick. First of all, let me applaud these people. I applaud what they're trying to do, and I think it's absolutely necessary. And there's probably some people in my family that could benefit from this facility. But the situation is that we don't want it in our neighborhood. Things have been okay so far, but we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But we are asking that you keep it as a residential neighborhood, and that because we got a lot of old folks like myself in this neighborhood that's been there a while. And when you get old, you get set in your ways, and we don't want to live under the stress of not knowing what's going to come next, what's going to come next door. If I've got to live right across the street, So, we've never had the police at our house. Yeah, we've been open almost a year now. We've never had the police, but they do patrol the neighborhood 3 times a day because of issues that are happening in that neighborhood. So I don't know. Let's change gears here a little bit. But we know what tomorrow is going to bring: reconciliation with families, transition to independent living, learned and restored life skills, decreased crime rates, better jobs, improved relationships, a peer support system, healing, joy, and peace, empowerment, and confidence to live in a sober life. We also help these guys when they're in the house, help them get their cars, help them get their kids back, or get them in the process to that, getting child support caught up, helping them get a driver's license. These are all things we're helping them get ready for when they're ready to go on their own, and they have those tools with them. GED, if they need their education, we'll help them with that. So we're just trying to empower and maybe give them some of the things they never had as they were growing up.
So what's next? How do we change the culture in Butts County? Like Garrett said, we have actual comments we continue to hear. We don't want drug dealers and thugs in our neighborhood. However, in reality, NIMBY has a strict zero tolerance of substance abuse use policy. The police have never been called to our residents. We have regular drug screenings. We have the clean house in the neighborhood. So we believe that Butts County officials and people have a good heart. We believe they're just unaware and fearful. So we are looking to facilitate interaction with hosting greater community events for recovery oriented. What we have done since 2022, since we've moved here, we have weekly sober softball. It's a great opportunity for those in recovery and those who support recovery to come and play and socialize in a clean environment. They bring their children with them and they get to play together. We also have put on what we call the Reason program. It's bringing Nick's story of awareness and of the addiction of a disease. We put on an advocacy meeting with Georgia Council for Recovery for the community. We also did a movie night on the lawn. We just performed in February the first ever Butts County Community Narcan training. And we found out last week that a woman who came to the meeting got several boxes of Narcan, went back to the community that she lived in the trailer park, and distributed it to some of the active using houses that she knew of. We found out last week that one of the residents had used that Narcan and that his life was saved. In May, we put on an all recovery festival, sharing a variety of pathways and providing resources for other organizations around Georgia serving our community. But mostly it was a celebration of recovery. What's next? We would love to invite you to the Mobilization Recovery Bus Stop in Jackson on September 10th. Also check out the Mobilization Across Georgia Facebook page for a stop that might be near you. We have continuously been transparent and honest. We have shared our story and mission every opportunity we get. We are members of the Butts County Rotary Club, Butts County of Chambers, Chamber of Commerce. And we also welcome questions, and we would be honored to sit down with anybody who has any concerns. We still welcome an opportunity to sit down with Butts County officials to talk about how to expand and to bring support to the recovery community. Let's start the conversation.
We have shared our story. No, let me move down. I'm sorry. Don't stop fighting. NNB keeps showing up and putting on recovery events. You know, the sober house is just one part, but we couldn't just sit and wait on that. So we've started all these events, programs, this and that, just to start building this community in Butts. We're showing Butts County that the recovery community is here to stay. Due to our dedication to the recovery community, Christine and I have spent more than $30,000 in legal fees. We are here to stay. The frivolous stuff that the county keeps throwing at us, we think is just to ring the cash register on our lawyer. just maybe hopefully run us out of money, but we're not going anywhere. And I think that's what really gets them is we're not leaving and we keep putting on the fight. The recovery community deserves this, deserves what we have learned. There's been an accountability court for over a decade, a methadone clinic for over 5 years here, 1 AA meeting and 2 NA meetings. However, there are no housing resources for those in recovery seeking to live in a family community with the support of their recovery peers in Butts County. We're fighting the NIMBY battle, but it's been in our backyard for generations. We are going to do what the county is not doing for the good of those in recovery, believing they will join us one day. Recovery is real. And let me just finish with it's amazing how this recovery community in Butts County is gradually growing. And to see people getting back with their families. And a lot of what we see down here is generational. You see, they learn from their parents, those parents learn from their parents, and it keeps going on. We're here to try to stop that. And how can the set of people now that we're working with move forward with their kids to a healthy life and put a stop to some of this generational stuff. So we'd love for you to connect with us on social media or reach out to us directly and stay in contact with us. Keep an eye on, we have another court date coming up August 22nd, I think it is. We're waiting for the feds. We have an investigator now that's taking this on for the Federal Fair Housing Act. We're just going to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep doing events. We're going to keep the people going and build this community to what it needs. So if people are out there needing help, there's a community that can help. And I thank you guys very much for allowing us to come in here. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Garrett and Christina. It's been really fruitful to just hear your experiences. So thank you for just providing context to all of us. It's very informative. And so I want to move on to the Q&A portion, which is already where you were headed, Garrett. So starting off, we did have a question in the chat that Ashley Sebo did get to answer, but we want to elaborate a little bit more. So the question reads, what are the demographics, locations, et cetera, of the baseline evaluation population?
Yeah, so I just wanted to expand a little bit. I don't think my chat message was as clear as it should be. So the baseline survey is a probability-based sample of Georgia residents 18 or older. Only encompasses individuals living within Georgia, and they must be adults. We had a total of 615 responses to the survey. However, we weight the survey responses to the most recent U.S. Census Bureau data for the entire state. And that's based on gender, age, race, ethnicity, educational attainment, and household income. This weighting actually allows us to generalize the results to the entire state. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And then also for Christina and Garrett, I see a request for your presence. Michael Karn said, would you like to speak at the Rural Recovery Rally? I'm hoping that you all can put your email or your information in the chat so that everyone that wants to get connected with you all can do so.
We'll speak at anything. We go to everything, whether it's in Atlanta or whether it's anywhere in Georgia, just so we can learn more. We've been in Georgia now a year, so we're still learning. Down south is a lot bit different than coming from Las Vegas. So we go to everything and anything we can learn to get better at this and to save lives we're in. So we'll come to anything.
Thank you so much. So our next question is, what common misconceptions or myths are associated with NIMBYism and SUD treatment facilities? And I know Garrett and Christina, you all really, got into this, but if all of you all can really expand on what this looks like.
Go ahead. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, I was trying to type our stuff.
No problem. So just thinking about some common misconceptions or myths that people believe about SUD treatment facilities in their neighborhoods.
You know, the misconception that we have occurred is people are thinking that we are bringing in drug addicts or drug dealers into the neighborhood. Where we have put our recovery resident is in a quiet, very small neighborhood.
Middle to lower income.
And or that they think it's a halfway house, or the misconception that the county has is that we're a personal care home, and they don't understand that that is not a personal care home and it is not a halfway house. It is just a regular single family home like any other family home. I mean, there's rules and like you have in any other family, the same as we do in our residential house.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything to add, Ashley?
No, just that, in terms of research, all of these stereotypes and myths are actually debunked, and that's backed by data and research. I can't name you specific, studies at this time, but there are many out there that have looked at this NIMBYism, especially criminalization increasing in the neighborhood, or, violent acts. It's not true. So, I mean, that's evidence-based research.
Thank you, Ashley. And again, Christina, thanks for that perspective. I love how you highlighted that, we aren't bringing in any negativity that people are associating with substance use disorder and anything like that, but we're actually, wanting to provide services to this community. So thank you so much for that. So our next question, how can community engagement, so this could be events, and I know you all mentioned a few that you have been able to put on, but how can community engagement and education play a role in mitigating NIMBYism and fostering support for substance use treatment facilities and also initiatives?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and take that one. Like I said, sober living is just one part, if you want to say a division of what we're doing. We've gone out and we couldn't just sit and wait on that to happen. So we started all these events, which is the bottom line is we're just building a recovery community that's very well needed. We have an awesome church, Joshua's Place Church, that we go to, that is on board with the things we're doing. We do a lot of the events. They have big grass areas for the recovery festival, the recovery movie night that we did. And I think just showing the community that we're not here to tear up our county. We're here to enhance and make our county better with these people with our recovery people that just needed some help and some direction. And by us all doing that, the others will see, they're not that bad. They're working on helping our people here in this community. We can slow down crime. Their opinion here for recovery is put them in jail or kick them out of the county. We can see over generations that doesn't work. So by putting on these events, by getting out there and showing, being in these other organizations, Rotary, all the other ones that we're involved in, they see that we show up every day and we only want to better our community and better our people and show love.
Thank you so much, Garrett. And then so moving on to our next question, what are the potential consequences of not effectively addressing NIMBYism?
The effects of the consequences, I believe, is we're not going to make any change. If we choose not to address this, nothing's going to change. It's all just going to stay the same. And that revolving door in jail is just going to continuously revolve. And, unfortunately, we have seen in the short amount of time that we've been here that door in jail is unbelievably revolving. And we're just trying to help slow that down to show that, we're bringing people into our house who are in recovery, helping them stay in recovery and move forward. We're not bringing people who are in active addiction into our house. Someone who's in active addiction needs to go to detox and treatment before they can come to our house. So for us, that is our misconception of where they're at and how we feel.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think you were starting to answer the next question, but we have a question from an audience member, Barbara. It says, I believe you stated you were not a halfway house or transitional house. How do you define the difference?
Our house, we are working with accountability court. So a lot of these people can't go back to the house. They have to stay in the county for one. And if they were arrested here in this county, they have to stay here. If they were a resident already, they can't go back to the house they were at because that's where the triggers were. That's where they got in trouble. And we see a lot of these people going back to the same house and starting the same things over again, where when they can come to our house, they're going to start putting themselves around likewise guys that are working on getting their lives together, and they can feed off each other. They're going to eat together every night, break bread, sleep together. They're going to keep an eye on each other. Hey, I didn't see you at a meeting, or do you want to go to one? There's all these kind of things that we're building these people, that there is a community besides the triggers that were at home or wherever they're coming from. So if we can smooth some of this out, give them a safe and a comfortable place to lay their head every night, and not in a rat infested house. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff that these guys were living in, and gradually, slowly keeping their recovery in a house like that. But it's just a matter of time before that falls. We put them in a clean environment, in a neighborhood, in a community. They start feeling back like they're part of the community, part of a good, clean house, good, clean guys, likewise like them. And we're seeing it's working. Our house in Vegas, it's working. I mean, they're feeding off each other, and it doesn't get better than that. I mean, I don't know what else to say except that is how they can finish it out. We'll be that last step. You know, if you get out of a rehab for a year or 6 months or however long you're in a rehab, we're that next step to clean everything up to get you ready to go out.
And the difference between a halfway house and us is a halfway house is normally court mandated. Our house is a house where they want to come and be and work on their recovery. They're not mandated to be in our house. So that's the difference for us. And I think that's the difference of halfway house. People have this misconception of halfway house. And halfway house is normally for those who are coming out of prison or jail and have to be mandated in some sort of housing with some rules and regulations, to my opinion, is what a halfway house is. And that is definitely not what we are here in our house. And what we try to promote is really love, to love each other.
Thank you all. And I'm hearing this this emphasis on just like collective impact and like support amongst everyone. And so there's also a comment in the chat that reads from Riley Kirkpatrick. It says, I just wanted to add that harm reductionists have a policy that we often follow that has specific details, forms of education when trying to educate community members and leaders, and it helps a ton. So that seems like that could potentially be a great resource as far as educating people on substance use disorder, and also potentially what you all do at NIC's New Beginnings. And moving on to our next question. So how can stakeholders such as healthcare professionals, policymakers, and community members collaborate to overcome NIMBYism? And I would love to hear from Ashley as well.
Garrett, I think you're muted.
Go
I
ahead.
can't hear you. Oh, there we go.
All right, we were waiting to see if Ashley was going to go. Go ahead, you want to answer this?
How do we get health professionals and everybody kind of on board with the NIMBY? For us here, I would say is to publicly say that this is needed. You know, when we have conversations with people on one-on-one, we've never had anybody say, oh gosh, no. What we've had is a complete positive response from residents to officials. They will all say this is needed in the community and we need this. But however, there's nobody publicly standing up and saying this is needed in our community and we need to back this and we need to move forward and how do we work together? That is what we have not had. And, you know, part of what is my confusion is there is a methadone clinic here we support that. That's in the county here. However, I'm not sure if most of the county even knows that it's here. With the fight that we have, it almost seems that they don't even realize that's here.
With 180 clients at a MAT facility. So we've been and talked with them, and I think there's some serious work that needs to be done with MAT. It's a whole different animal. But I think these guys need a house to where they can all feed off of each other. And hey, I tapered down this way, or I did that. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could be done with MAT. We're just not ready to get there yet. Women's houses, we're ready to get into that, but we just got to get through this first one and let them see that we're not here to harm the county. Let them see that we're only trying to do good. And if we can possibly help any other counties that are going through, and I know there's other counties that are going through with what we're going through. Once we get through, maybe we can all join together and help that county and help the next county and start helping these counties out that need it, that are going through exactly what we are. Not only hold no, but hell no on any kind of recovery.
Thank you all so much. Did you want to hop in, Ashley?
Yeah, I apologize. Everything froze up on me. So I guess just to elaborate on that, you know, it really takes leaders in the community, right? And not only having the community awareness and the resident aspect, but having that political support and having that advocacy is extremely important because, you know, like some people have stated in the chat, there's zoning laws. There are things that hinder these recovery and treatment houses from coming into neighborhoods as it is. And even if the community supported it, the neighbors, the residents, that would be impossible. So having that advocacy and having that leader in the political realm is extremely important as well.
Thank you, Ashley. And I'm seeing some great resources in the chat. I know that, you know, we're all trying to speak and read at the same time. But if you all get a chance to kind of read through the chat, we're seeing some people that are sharing some similar experiences with you all that work in Butts County as well. And then also I see Riley again adding some great resources that may be helpful for you all. So thank you all so much for all of your participation. This has been great and informative again. I do want to reiterate and just remind everyone that we do have a post-webinar survey that we love to just get everyone's feedback, figure out ways that we can improve with our webinar series, but also learn about what topics that you all are interested in seeing. So you all will see Ashley drop the chat, drop in the chat as well, the link. So yeah, thank you all for joining our webinar. And again, thank you to our speakers, Garrett and Christina, as well as Ashley and Aaron. Thank you so much for your services as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.